All right, so it is 4:01. We're gonna get this started here. Officially get it started because we kind of got it started, but we're officially gonna get it started now. So what's up, VIPs? Thank you guys for tuning in to the recording of episode number 2 of the Real Travelpreneurs Podcast. That's right. Throw your deuces up. Throw the twos up. Our special guest today is Joe Rivera, coming in live from
from LA.
West Coast.
That's right.
Hey, West Coast. Look at that. And he got the moves. Hey.
I was expecting my intro song or something. I wasn't to walk in here. Where's my intro song?
I know we need some. You know what? We'll have John throw it in on the edit. We'll have John throw it in.
Podcast 3.
We need some West Coast music dropping right there as Joe did his shoulder moves there. So we're gonna get California love. There we go. I love Cali. I just love Cali. And that shirt that you have is giving me Cali vibes, LA vibes. So I love it. I
need a couple palm trees behind me. I know.
I actually have a palm tree. You said you were feeling it?
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a palm tree to the right of me. So for me, like between your shirt, your energy, and this palm tree next to me, I'm feeling the LA vibes.
You feeling it?
Sure.
You feeling it?
Yeah. Give it. So we're gonna get right into it, and we want to get to know the amazing Joe. As you guys can see already, his energy is amazing, his personality is phenomenal, and I love the West Coast. And I've been there several times, and everywhere I go, I just had the time of my life. But in particularly, LA, that one really touched my heart. So I'm so happy that you're from LA. So like you said, you're from LA, and we're gonna get a little personal. We want to get to know who Joe really is. So how did you end up in LA? Is that where you're from? Did you move there? And then also, what's life like in LA?
Yeah, you know what? I got my parents to thank for being born here. My parents are immigrants from Mexico. They moved here when they were like 18 years old, something like that. Had me, and born and reared here in LA. LA, I feel like will always be home. I feel like I didn't appreciate LA as much as I do now. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like the more you travel, the more you get a sense of where you're from, So a lot of people think of, I'm going to travel to get to see other places. But I feel like it also gives you some insight as to where you're from, and what does it mean to be from LA? You got to have something to compare it to. But LA is dope. I do love the chill vibes out here. I mean, I feel like even a lot of the stuff that's very stereotypical really does fit. I mean, we're all just kind of vibing here, just, taking our time. And obviously y'all in New York on the opposite end, are hustling and constantly moving. So you can definitely feel the difference the minute you hop off the plane and even just step into LAX, which is supposed to be, airports are supposed to be crazy, but I feel like it doesn't compare to your airports out there. Let's see. I've been here forever though. The only other place that I lived in is Spain. I lived there for 1 year. But if it were up to me, I mean, I'd be living in different parts of the world. Probably like every 2 years if I could. If I could move around every 2 years, I would.
That's pretty cool. I never even thought about that. Move around every 2 years, and I think that would be amazing life experience and story to tell. Every 2 years, you're in somewhere different culture, different groups of people, experiencing different foods, just different types of lifestyle. I like that. I never even thought about that. So LA, and you're right. New York, the hustle and bustle, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
A New Yorker for me. When I went to LA, it was just a totally different vibe. I was like, whoa. It's like automatically my body just relaxed. I'm like.
You know what? I think the craziest thing to see is like, so I work a lot with students, as far as travel goes. And I think taking them to New York is like, especially like interesting. Like I had a group from Florida and, hello, Florida, but man, those people move slow. And I just feel like you take students to a place like New York and it's like, okay, that's like a, 10-minute walk or whatever, 15 minutes walk. And it's like, it takes them 25 minutes to get across a couple streets. And I feel like that's where you really see, if you got like a group of like 50 Floridians in a city like New York City, and you just see the difference and you're just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But even just like with the groups of people that I travel with, sometimes you can see the difference. And that's always fun to see the comparison.
Yes, I definitely understand it. Even when I go to Florida too, even just the driving, I'm just like, everyone's crawling. Like, you guys not rushing to somewhere? Because in New York, you're just always rushing, going here, going there. So it's like, it just made me realize, like, wow, New Yorkers, we really are just here, 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 hustle and bustle, hustle and
Y'all are on the
bustle.
move. Yeah, y'all are on the move. I don't know if y'all really have things to do or y'all just like pretending you got things to do.
I think
I'm like,
I
where are
think
y'all
some people
going?
may be pretending because I'm thinking, do we really have things to do like that all the time in that fast of a speed?
Yeah. There's no such
So
thing as like, taking it easy, smelling the roses. Like, that don't exist. You just want to get to where you're going
that's
to. We
right. Please get
definitely
out
take
my
it.
way.
Yeah, we definitely take it a little slower over here in LA. But it's fun to switch it
Definitely.
up. You gotta keep your body guessing, you gotta keep your mind guessing. So much love for everywhere.
I agree, and I'm happy that it's different because it gives you it's just a different experience. Because imagine if everyone was just chill and relax, that would be kind of boring. So you in New
Hmm.
York, you're in the hustle bustle, you're moving fast. Go to LA, walk along the beach, enjoy, wear nice flower shirts like Joe, and just take it in. So that's
Yeah.
that's cool. And I
I
know
had
you
to tone it
mentioned.
a,
Oh, go ahead.
I had to tone it a little bit down with the black because that's another thing too. Like even I went to this one class and the person giving the class was from New York and she was like, "You guys are so cute, you people from LA." And we're like, "What?" Like look at all your little shoes because we all had like different colored shoes. And you go to New York and it's like black, the dark brown, your hat is probably as much color as I've seen in New York because like everybody's just messed out on the colors, but you start picking out these. But yeah, she was like, "Your shoes are all so cute with your like reds and your blues and your yellows," and I'm like, "Wow, like I guess so." Watch next
you
time you
know,
walk in the streets.
I know. You know what? I must say, when it comes to dressing, I am a little bit a brighter New Yorker than usual. I like the bright colors, but today I decided to have an even medium black shirt, but a bright hat.
There
Okay.
you go. There you go.
Now I
I
know you
like it. That yellow
mentioned
looks
you like
good.
it. Oh, thank you,
Hmm.
Joe. I'm just trying to. You look great, Joe. I'm just trying to match your energy and match your
Thank
style.
you.
So I think I did a
Did
good
it.
job. I think I did a good job.
The-
So I know you mentioned your family earlier. So you said your family was also from Los Angeles.
Yeah, so they're from Mexico, moved to LA.
Uh,
The funny thing, I said I've only lived in Spain, but that's not true. I lived in Mexico for a little bit, and I mean like a few months. So when I tell people that story, they're like, "So you basically vacation there like a long time?" But I say we moved there because when we had the crazy earthquake here, the '94 earthquake, which is Northridge. Northridge is about 20 minutes from where I live. That was the epicenter, and like everything just came crumbling down. My parents were like, "We're not doing this. We're leaving." So we actually moved to Mexico. So we had already been living here. I was about 5. We moved to Mexico. And the crazy thing is, like, my memories of there, like, I remember running up to my gate that was at my house in Mexico and, like, talking to my friends through the gate. But it was such a short amount of time. Like, it was literally only a few months. The reason being that an earthquake hit Mexico after we moved there. And my parents were like, we're going back. If we're going to get earthquakes here and there, we're just going to go back. And so we ended up moving back to LA. So technically, even though it was only for a few months, the idea was we were there to stay. Had it not been for that earthquake that happened soon after, and like I said, I think my parents, with how crazy it was here, like how bad the earthquake was here, I think we might have still been living there. But I'm back in LA. I still got plans to move to Mexico. I'm not sure when, but I would still love to spend a few years in the motherland.
Wow, that's actually really funny. You guys went to Mexico to run away from something only to experience it in Mexico and just go right back. So if
Right.
there wasn't an earthquake in Mexico, we would be doing this live with you live from Mexico,
That's right. That's right.
basically. So I
Yeah.
know family plays a huge part in who we are today. And you mentioned your family a couple times there. And it helps shape our beliefs, our morals, our values that's instilled into us from the time we were born up until now and our life experiences. So tell us about your family, tell us about your upbringing and how your family experiences plays a part in who Joe is today and where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm definitely, like I said, from a Mexican family. I actually had a huge identity crisis, kind of at the beginning, when I was asked, where are you from or, what are you? I'd always say Mexican, Mexican, and like I would always avoid the second part of the hyphen, the American part. just because my household was very Mexican. So the food that we ate was very Mexican. The music we listened to was very Mexican. The language we spoke here was Spanish. So it wasn't until I went to school when I was 5 that I started learning English. And so there was just this huge identity crisis for me because I wanted to claim being American because I knew I had been born here and I had lived there here my whole life. But I think just that idea of what being American meant, I was like, that's not me. I'm not, white. I'm not, I don't got the blonde hair, blue eyes. And so I think that's something that's very interesting about my upbringing. Now I've learned to accept that identity and I'm actually reclaiming it, because I'm like, you know what? You don't have to be blonde hair and blue eyes to be American. I am American, like this is what America looks like. So that was, I think, something interesting about my upbringing. I got my mom, my dad, and 2 sisters. One of my sisters is 27 and the other one's 15. So huge gap between my siblings, or my last little sister. Love her. Actually, I kind of recommend that. Everybody wants to have their kids all together. But you know what? I think the fact that my parents had my youngest sister like over 10 years later, it was so cool because it kind of kept us tight as a family, because we wanted to do things for the little one. So we're all adults kind of living our own life. But my little sister, like, oh, let's do this for her. Let's do this for her. And so there was almost always an excuse to hang out together. So I say that's pretty cool. Um, as far as like who they shaped me and like who I've become today, you know what? So again, we're here talking about travel, right? This is what it's all about today. And I have my parents to thank because I feel like they've always been so open with, whatever you want to do, we support you. So just to get a little bit about me, so I actually went to school for deaf studies. That's deaf, DEAF. I gotta say that because everybody thinks I say deaf. So deaf people that can't hear. And I just happened to land in that major in high school. I was studying French, and I met my first deaf person in high school, and I was so fascinated by sign language. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn that. And I was like, if I quit French, like I don't want to be a quitter, like I want to get my 4 years of French in. So I kind of just, started self-teaching. And then when I was getting ready to go into college, I was like, what am I gonna do? And I didn't want to go in undecided because I felt that anybody who's gonna go into college undecided, like you were showing you didn't know what you wanted in life. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. Since then, my views have changed. You don't have to know what you want to do in life. Again, you'll see my career switched, a few times. But yeah, so I ended up going to school for deaf studies. I thought I was going to be an interpreter initially, and then I got a job as a teacher assistant, and I began teaching deaf kids in Baldwin Hills in LA. I taught there for 3 years, and then that's when I made my move to Spain. So I lived in Torre del Mar, Spain for a year. I was basically, they call it a language and culture ambassador. It's a fancy name for teacher assistant. I taught little Spanish babies English while I was out there. But yeah, so like I said, I have been doing the teaching. Suddenly, I'm a teacher assistant, and then when I came back, I was like, I want to do tour directing. Let me see how this goes. So circling back around to my family, like I'm always telling people, like go after what you want to do, what you're passionate about. And I always have to kind of take a step back and acknowledge that if it wasn't for my family, being like, hey mom, like can I stay in the garage for a couple months while I kind of figure out my life, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. So I had my career all in place, but my family really provided that opportunity for me to try something new because I didn't have to worry about rent, or just having to make my bills while I transitioned to this new passion or this new career of mine. So my family, like I said, they've been super supportive in what I've done. Until this day, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. They're like, great, awesome, go for it. We're behind you. And I really do. I thank them so much, just for all their love.
That is awesome.
Excuse me.
God bless you. God
Thank you.
bless you. That's awesome. And I can definitely relate to that. I come from a similar background with my family. They're super supportive. Even if I say right now, mom, that I want to go be an astronaut, they're going to be like, hey, Shani, go ahead. How can we support you? So it's just great having that support. Even if it's not from family, even if it's from friends or whomever. So I think that's really great.
Yeah.
So
We can't
you
we
said
can't
you
take
got
that for
into deaf
granted.
study.
We can't take that for granted.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. It definitely helps with whatever it is that you want to pursue. Just having that support system there. So
Absolutely.
that's great. I'm so happy that you were able to experience that. Now, you said you got into deaf studies. I think that's super, super cool. Now, anytime you start working in the industry, there are many things that we learn and we become aware of, even have a greater appreciation for. So, for example, for me, back in the day, I worked at Best Buy. Now, I learned about TVs and all these tech things. So now, after working at Best Buy, getting my eyes open more to that technology industry, when I go shopping for TVs, now there are certain things that I look for. And when I go TV shopping, just because I have a greater appreciation for certain things. Now, when it comes to you and getting involved with deaf studies, what are some things for you that you have a greater appreciation for, that you learned, that really opened up your eyes, that you really value through your experience with deaf studies?
You know what? I think it's the same thing. I mean, you just learn about your privilege as a hearing person. Like I'm not. So again, I was mentioning to you earlier, the VIPs caught a bit of it. But I'm like, oh man, like I would have loved for this to have been interpreted live. So even though we kind of talked about maybe I can interpret it for later, the fact that anybody who can hear is able to tune into this live right now at this second is something that the deaf community doesn't have, because we failed to provide access. And by we, I mean me, because I'm the one who's in it. I should have been a little bit more into it. But even think about going to see, the latest movie, oh, let's go, we'll catch the midnight show. You're super excited. Are the captions ready for that midnight show? Probably not. They got to wait 2-3 weeks, sometimes a month to get captions. And so they don't get that same excitement. That's all fun and games. But now let's talk about the fact that, and I'm going to stop at some point because I could go on forever, but the fact that the White House doesn't have sign language interpreters up there, for really important information of what's happening to our country. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me, that I acknowledged my privilege. That's like, man, again, this is exactly what privilege is. You don't even realize, that you're so fortunate in some of these things, and until you meet a community that's disenfranchised, and that, quite honestly, we haven't been doing them justice, as citizens, of America, of the world, of the human race. So I think I've just realized the need for us to worry about accessibilities, and something simple for everybody at home. Next time you walk into whatever, a restaurant or something, they got a TV on, be like, hey, can you put the captions on for the deaf person that's going to walk in after you? Something simple that you can do, or set it up at your house, have your captions going, so that if a deaf person happens to walk into your placement time, you don't got to make it this whole big, like, oh man. So there are little things we could do. And I think, like I said, that's something that I feel like, man, there are, again, you're always learning, whether we're talking about race, disabilities issues, LGBT issues, there's always something to learn and something to acknowledge. And there's no such thing as always being woke. You gotta continuously remind yourself and kind of keep an eye out for, what am I missing?
That is absolutely correct. And I love that perspective. And even something that you just said, it was when you go to the movie theater, sometimes it takes a few weeks or to a month for someone who, cannot hear to watch the movie, or watch the movie. And I didn't even think about that. I was like, wow.
That's your privilege.
Because exactly. So even right now in this moment, you even opened up my eyes, and so now when I do go out, I'm gonna think about, what about the people that cannot hear? How is this gonna be able to serve them so they can enjoy this as well?
Yeah, and again, they don't.
So that was a very, very
They
nice
don't.
perspective.
They don't want our pity. They just want something like subtitles, or a sign language interpreter. Like, again, miss me with all that. Oh, poor things. It's not about that. It's like, let's just get everybody on the same playing field, and move forward.
Right. I definitely hear that. So how long? I don't know any sign language at all.
Okay.
It's one of the things I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to learn that?
We can learn travel. Let's all learn the sign for travel. We ready?
All right. What's the sign for travel?
You put your fingers like this, okay, and you go. So it's like you're going to another place. Yep. Face them forward. Face them forward, though.
Oh, facing forward.
This is like trippy, like you're tripping out. So travel.
Oh, you're tripping out. Okay, got you.
Yeah, so it's like
travel. There we go.
There you go. Travel. There you go.
Travel.
You go.
So let's get into travel, right?
I love it.
I'm pretty sure there's people watching this who's doing this along with us
I
too, right?
hope so.
We can't see you guys, but we see you. I feel that energy. I feel that energy.
I love it. Yeah, I hope so. Get into it.
So, so you got started in deaf studies and then became a world traveling tour guide. That is super, super, super dope. So tell us about that journey and how did that come about? How did that happen?
Yeah, so like I said, I taught for 3 years and then I moved to Spain. And I think the biggest reason why I was able to get into travel was because I had time to reevaluate. So again, here in the States, I feel like there's this, I've read a couple posts and I love that people are talking about this, but there's the glorification of being busy. It's almost like it's a good thing to be busy. Like if you're not busy, what are you doing? And don't take me wrong, I think being busy can be a good thing, but I think moving over to Spain, moving over to Torre del Mar, where it's a small town. Like I said, it takes 30 minutes to walk across the entire town. It just really taught me to slow down. And it gave me an opportunity to think, like, what does Joe want? Like, and I knew I loved teaching. I knew I loved my students and I love supporting the community, and these kids, when you're in that classroom, you really get to know them on another level. And you almost kind of learn also kind of put you and your problems aside because it's like you got a room full of, with deaf kids, it's about, I don't know, it could be 10, 15, 20 students, and it's almost like you got a peek into all these little worlds. Um, and so, yeah, so moving to Spain, like I said, it just like my world slowed down so much. And I just had an opportunity to think, like, okay, what do I want to do next? And I've known since my high school. So during high school, I took a trip to Europe. It was a 1 month long trip during the summer. And I knew since then that like traveling, I mean, there's just like this emotion. And I'm not big on like horoscopes, but I'm a Scorpio. It always sounds dumb saying that, but I'm a Scorpio, and I think the thing I really identify with is being passionate. And I can't help but wonder, like, do people experience emotions the same way that I do sometimes? Because I feel like elated sometimes, and I'm looking at someone who might be doing the exact same thing I'm doing, and I'm like, are you not like overtaken by this joy? Like, how cool is this? Like, we're at a black sand beach in Hawaii. Like, this is ridiculous. Or sometimes it's just me riding my bike, and I'm just like, how fun is this? I'm just like, my friend calls me Pee Wee because riding my bike's one of my favorite things to do. But yeah, so I kind of lost my train of thought. But emotion, getting overtaken by it. Yeah, so I knew that like travel kind of brought that feeling to me, where it was just like it's a level of happiness that it's kind of like no other. There are very few things in my life that bring me kind of to that feeling, and so I was like, okay, I need money to travel, but what if I get paid to travel instead? And then I won't need the money. I'll actually have the money and I can put that towards something else, which I don't know what it would be if it wasn't travel because that's basically all I spend my money on food and I spend my money on travel and a nice shirt once in a while. So yeah, so I started looking online, one day after hanging out at the beach for like 5 hours, I was like, let me see what kind of jobs there are. And I came across tour directing. And I had done a couple of trips, but I didn't realize that it was like it really was a career, So I was just kind of like, let me see. So I found a website. I found this one, a TO tour operator. It's a tour company that was like, we need someone in Spain, and I was like, okay, well, I just lived here for a year. Let me see what's up. So I applied. I ended up getting the job. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh. And so that basically kind of kicked off my traveling career. When I got done touring Spain with like, I don't know, 20, 25 teenagers, came back to the States and I was like, I want to do this full time. And so I found an organization, shout out to IATDG. It's the International Associations for Tour Guides and Tour Directors. And they were having an event, and so I went and I interviewed with 33 tour operators, I think it was, over a weekend. Some of it was a little more formal, 20, 30-minute interviews. Some of it was like, you got, 1 minute, impress me, go, you know? And that's basically how I ended up, starting to do this full time. And, that's where, like I said, during that transition time, because it was about 4 months from when I came back to when that event was. That's where, like I said, my parents were like, yeah, you can stay here, for as long as you want. So, I have this tendency of making it all sound so easy. But you do have to put in the work. Like I said, interviewing with 33 companies was not easy. having to adapt my resume to a world that I was still kind of new to. And again, I had to have the support of my parents, that I could be like, I might not be getting as much work these next 4 months, or just being financially stable enough where, I put money away where I can, live off my own money for 4 months. But I was traveling. I had not put money away. If I could afford a bus somewhere, I was like taking my last quarter. I was just trying to go somewhere.
I can definitely. Right, right, right. And when you have that love and passion for travel, it's like you do anything to go experience another city or another country. So that's great. So what's life like as a travel guide? Are you always on a trip every month, every week?
Yeah,
Do you have sometimes back to back? Then you take a
yeah.
space. So tell us about what's life like as a travel
Yeah,
guide.
so you definitely want to sign up with multiple tour operators. Like I said, those are the tour companies, right? And basically the way it works is you got your calendar with your availability, and you just start contacting these companies, and you go, hey, just want to give you my availability. I'm, kind of a somewhat of an expert in these cities. And then basically you'll get an email that says, hey, Joe, we've got a trip in Hawaii from January 1st through the 7th. Are you available? And you go, yes or no. And I basically just scheduled it in, put it into my calendar, think about it later. And you basically just wait for these emails to come in. So at the beginning, like I said, you do have to market yourself. You do got to make sure that, I don't know, a lot of it, like part of it is knowing the city itself, and making sure you got some fun stories to tell. It's not always about how tall a building is or when that person died. It's just more like give me something fun. And then the other part of that is obviously, you got to enjoy being around people. You got to enjoy talking to new people, people that might not be exactly like you. But I think that's what makes it fun. So yeah, you schedule it in, and then this past year before COVID hit, I would say I was probably home maybe like 3, 4 days every 3 weeks. So I fly into LA, I'll pack my bag, and then I'll leave. I did a lot of DC, New York City tours, so I'll be in DC for like a week and a half. Take a train up to New York City, be there for another week. Do another tour, and then come back home to relax for 2, 3 days. And then I might be doing a tour here in LA. So I meet my group in downtown or at Disneyland or something, and then get ready to fly to Oregon or whatever the next week. So it's just a constant in and out. It can be a little crazy. I think what makes this a job fun is just the unpredictability of it all. Right now, I'm enjoying. So right now, I'm doing sign language interpreting full time, and I'm enjoying the predictability of that. So I know I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna get in front of my computer, and I'll be in these classes, and I'm interpret for my student, and there's no surprises. But when you're doing tour directing, it's like you never know what's gonna happen. It's like the Empire State Building is like flooded that day, so nobody can go up. And we don't got tickets to Top of the Rock. So what are we gonna do for an hour and a half that we scheduled in? 50 kids got to go to the bathroom at once. Where am I supposed to take 50 kids to go to the bathroom all at once? The subway we're gonna take is closed that day because of whatever. Or so it's just like the unpredictability of it. I think makes the travel job really fun, and obviously all the cool destinations and all the incredible people you get to meet too.
That is awesome. That sounds like it's like a job that can never get boring because every day or every trip is something completely different. You're dealing with different types of people, a different location, different experiences. That sounds super, super, super exciting. So you said there's a lot of stories to tell. So you say you do Washington, D.C. So for example, let's say we're in Washington, D.C. right now. What are some cool stories that you have given or told regarding Washington, D.C.?
You know what? Oh, it's gonna get real sad. So like one of the places we visit is the 9/11 memorial at the Pentagon. And it's like I can tell you like, oh, this many people died, and this is how many people hijacked the plane, and all of that. And I will, I'll give the kids the background, but it's really about making it personal. So I really like talking about this 11-year-old girl, Aisha Kadam. Shout out to her and her family. But I think this story hits because this girl was 11, and sometimes my kids that go with me are 11. But she was actually on her way here to California because she had won a National Geographic's tour, a National Geographic's essay writing contest. And so it was her and a couple other kids from DC that were flying over to the Channel Islands. And she just happened to be on that plane that got turned around and got struck in the Pentagon. So it's just super sad because you hear the stories of her parents that were like, we had just dropped off our daughter at the airport, and then her dad was like driving to work or something, and he hears this announcement that a plane had just crashed into the Pentagon, and he was like, "That's my kid, like that's my daughter." And I mean, super terrible. He finds out that it was in fact his daughter who was on that plane. Kind of a turn and a little bit of a positive spin. Super sweet. Kids from all over the world start sending this family money in different denominations of 11. So it was like 11 cents, $11, to honor the fact that Asia was 11, the fact that it was on 9/11. And Asia was really big on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so her family actually started a foundation with all of the money that they started receiving from people from all over the world, and put it towards a scholarship for other kids. And her mom was super sweet. She said, I just want to put someone through school or through college because although I'll never get to see Asia graduate and, accomplish her dreams, at least this is a way for her to do it for somebody else, So, uh,
Wow.
yeah, and imagine being there in DC in front of the Pentagon, and you're looking at these benches. If you've ever been there, they've got these benches, and the cool thing about the benches is here's a little sign language for you. So they're facing. If the Pentagon is here, um, and the bench is here, you read the name on the side of the bench. So if you're standing here, you're reading the name here, and the Pentagon is here. So that is someone that was in the Pentagon that passed because you're facing it. And then there are certain benches that are facing this way. So if you're standing here, you read the name on this side, and you're facing away from the Pentagon. And that was the name of somebody who was on the plane that crashed. So a lot of these
Oh,
monuments and
wow.
memorials, and there's just these super cool stories of these cities, which is, sometimes people don't want to spend the money on a tour guide or a tour director, but I promise you, like if you get a good one, someone who really brings these cities to life, these destinations to life, is so worth it. It's so worth it, So I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen the Pentagon Memorial in DC, I highly recommend you make a stop. I don't know if it's open right now. I know it was closed. They had some water issues. But there's so much more I could tell you about that memorial and a few others. But maybe on next time around.
Right, of course, because we definitely have to have Joe back on. Thank you so much for sharing that, and that was really insightful. The parents, they could have taken the money to do anything, like all of it, and they decided to give back and start a foundation and put someone else through school. That right there is powerful. That is so awesome. So we did DC. What other cities have you gone to? And then we can do another story with that one. More that's another
Like a
interesting and
cheerful
amazing story there.
story.
So
You know what? So I do.
sure, or whatever.
Yeah,
It could be a funny
no
story, any type
worries.
of story.
Okay, so one of the
We're
things
going on a
we're
virtual
gonna,
tour with you right now.
I know, right? So I have to like refresh my memory on a few of these stories, but like for example, even when we go to New York City, the kids are always super excited to get on the subway, because again, they're from Florida or wherever they're from. They're like, we never done this. So there's a couple really cool stories about New York City and like the subway system. There was this, I think he was 15 at the time, but there was this 15-year-old kid who actually hijacked one of the trains in New York City. He was just obsessed with the transit system, and so he actually got himself a copy of the manual, and he learned how to run a subway. Somebody had called out, and like I said, he had sounds like a New Yorker. So he actually had the uniform, so he shows up, and they were like, "Well, okay, it was this black dude. They thought he was older than he was. He gets on the train, and I wish I remember what train it was, but I think it was something for like 3 hours or something. Like he just running the train up and down, and it wasn't until later when he got caught. And they were like, "How old is this guy?" And he was like 15 years old. So, like I said, I got a lot more details, but the way that it works for a tour director is like I think about what city am I going to, and it's almost like you take the city, right? So I just talked about DC. It takes me, a couple hours to be like, okay, let me get DC out of my brain and get back into that New York City mode and, refresh up my
Mm.
stories. But I like telling that, and I like telling about actually before when the kids were getting free fares, because they would put the coin in and take it out, or they would get, that's what they would do. They would get the when we were still using coins, they would get the coin system stuck, And so they were trying to put in the quarter, it wouldn't work, or their coin, they would leave. So the kids would come and like suck out the coin from the little system. And so the transit system started getting like, wait, what's happening here? Like, we're not getting as much money as we normally would. And it's because they were jamming it. And so what they started doing is they actually started putting, like, I don't know if it was like pepper powder or some kind of spicy powder into the little coin slots for all of these kids or people that were like trying to get the money out of the machine. So it's just a bunch of like cool little stories like that, that's like we could sit there and just wait for the train to come, or I could tell you about the 15-year-old kid who, got to, drive, whatever train up and down New York City.
Right. Wow. I'm from New York and I didn't even know any of that. I'm sitting here intrigued, like, wow, Joe, tell me more. What's another story? Like that's New Yorkers, man.
It's something else.
They are something else. We are something else. Like for real. For real. So
fun little stories like that all over. There's just fun little stories like that all over. And again, I think that's what I'm gonna do one more shout out. There's anybody who is interested in becoming a tour director, tour guide. There's this great company called the Trip School. Feel free to look them up. But that's something that they really emphasize. Get fun stories. I can tell you the building is 1,751 feet. I'm bored. Moving on. But talk about, I don't know, getting like I said, pepper up some kids' nose because they're trying to steal the transit's money. I find that a little more interesting than the height of a building.
Same here. That is definitely entertaining. So out of all the cities, well, actually, before I even get into that, how many cities, like what other cities between New York, besides New York and Washington, D.C., have you been to?
Oh man.
I wonder, did you hit all 50 states yet?
No, I have not. I've driven through a lot of them because when I was younger, me and my family went over to Chicago, and we drove out there, so right there, like we crossed, tons of states. But yeah, in the States, I've been to Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Texas, Florida, New York, DC, Maine, Idaho. I feel like there's a couple others. And then internationally, a few islands in the Caribbean, St. Kitts, Jamaica. I haven't quite made it to Puerto Rico yet. Cuba. While I was in Spain, I did quite a bit of traveling too. I think, again, you don't realize how big we are as a country. And then you go over to Spain and it's like a 2-hour flight to France, or like a 3-4 hour flight to Ireland. So I did go to Spain, Italy, Portugal. I popped into Morocco real quick. Man, the list goes on. There's a bunch of places. I'm very blessed that I feel like I've seen a lot. I'm still trying to make my way over to Asia, though. Have you been out there at all?
Yes, I've been to Hong Kong.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And I've been to Thailand.
Okay.
Wait, does Thailand count as? You know what? I need to look at a map for that. So, but over there, that's
okay. Yeah, that totally counts.
So that was pretty cool.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, it counts. All right, cool.
Totally counts.
Yeah, Asia is cool. But you listed a ton of places that I still haven't been to that I would like to go to. So out of all the cities, let's start with the U.S. first. Out of all the cities in the U.S. that you've been to, or say states, which one has been your most favorite, and why, and your best experience?
I like your Nelly. She said, "Don't forget Guatemala." I can't forget Guatemala. That's right. You know what? I figured I'd save that for a little later since we'd probably be talking about Guatemala in a second. But you know what? One of the coolest experiences that I think I had in the States was in Alaska. I got the chance to do an Alaskan cruise. And I'm telling you right now, number one, I wasn't a big cruise person to begin with. Now that I've kind of gotten over the kitschiness of it all, I feel like it's one of those things like, you know what, I would just show up, have a good time. No offense to anybody who's super into cruises. Like I said, I've since then become a cruise person. But I would say that was just super cool, like going to Alaska because you get a national parks person, so you go through like Glacier Bay, you go through several ports in Alaska. We made a quick stop in BC, Canada. And I don't know, I mean, something about coming out and just seeing like, again, these glaciers, and you're just like sipping your like hot cup of coffee on a cruise ship. Like that was magical. And there's just like a lot of natural beauty there. If you pop into my Instagram, you can see one of my favorite pictures there. But I mean, it's just this like a gorgeous, body of water with like these mountains in the back. it's beautiful. It's incredible. If you've never thought about maybe traveling to Alaska, a lot of the cruise ships will leave from Seattle. So you can make a little two-stop. Go to Seattle for a few days, hop on your cruise, and head up north. But if you haven't considered that, I highly recommend it. It's gorgeous up there. Little insider tip: look at when the cruise ships are gonna start heading up out there toward the north, because if you could catch one of those first ones that are heading out, the ports are pretty empty, so it's almost like you get Alaska to yourself. If you go later, you might pop in and you
Uh-huh.
get like 5 or 6 different cruise ships that all docked at the same time. So it's like, oh man, it's just a whole lot of tourists, a whole lot of us. But yeah,
A whole lot of
yeah.
us, right?
So I highly recommend just kind of look when the season starts for the Alaska tours and try to catch one of those first ones.
That's a good tip. Thank you. I don't like being cold, so every time I think of Alaska, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be freezing cold. But after that, even that just brief description of your experience in Alaska, I'm sold. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to put on 10 pants and 10 hoodies
You get
and just head on over there and look at the,
exactly.
the glaciers.
You get a little
So, you have
go
sold
ahead and
me.
get your drink package, man, you can put a little something in your coffee while you're out there enjoying the bears or whatever's happening. Yeah, no, it's super dope. It's super dope. Run your heater in your room. Jump in the hot tub. You'll be all
Right.
right.
Right, jump in the hot tub and make it, like you said, put a little something in your coffee, a nice little a special coffee. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend it.
I'm with it.
So
I'm
dope.
with it. Sounds great. So cool, Alaska. I'm so happy you said that because that's just so different from most people. Oh, where'd you go? Where's your favorite place in the U.S.? No one really says Alaska. So I'm so happy you shared that and also gave some insight on what it was about Alaska. So that sounds super, super, super cool. Now, what about countries? Because I know you've been everywhere. What has been your favorite country to visit, or a country that you had your best experience?
Yeah. You know what? This one definitely goes to the Guatemala crew. I think of all of the trips that I've done, and when I get asked, which I do get asked constantly, I think Guatemala has like such a special place in my heart because of the people that went on that trip. So as much as it was a work trip for me, um, it just became something else. I mean, this podcast right here came into fruition because of that trip in Guatemala 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. And it was just incredible because it was a different kind of trip. What I mean by that, it's a volunteer. For anybody who doesn't know what a volunteer is basically a tour or a vacation where you go do volunteer work. And the idea behind volunteers is that you're not the only one benefiting, right? When we go on vacation, where we're off somewhere, we're having a good time, having the cheap drinks or whatever, and just enjoying yourself. And so when you go on a volunteer, the idea is like this reciprocal benefit. The wherever it is that you're going, they're going to benefit somehow from you being there. Which I know right now, and especially with the rise of travel, there's a concern about over tourism. And in some of these places that we love to go, and they almost get kind of destroyed because they're over visited. Definitely something for you to put on your reading list, or watch a YouTube about it. Over tourism. But yeah, Guatemala was something special. I had the chance to go with John Clash and his crew. Shout out to John Clash and the Guatemala crew. Um, to Guatemala to build a bottle school. So it was just awesome because um, automatically, like just immediately, the type of trip or the type of people that a trip like that is gonna kind of call in are different. The fact that somebody is taking time to, they know they're not gonna be sipping on pina coladas, but they're actually gonna be turning cement, or tying bottles to chicken wire or whatever it is, like that already is a different kind of person that this trip kind of pulls in. And so immediately, I mean, getting there and meeting everybody, like you could just feel it. You could feel the energy, and it was just an incredible time. John's been committed to that mission, to building bottle schools in Guatemala a little longer than I have. I believe he had a year on top of me, maybe two. Um, but yeah, it's incredible. We got to get in touch with the communities, the indigenous communities, that were out in some of these small towns. You really get taught to appreciate everything that you have, and you realize that you don't need a whole lot to be happy. um it's a whole nother world. It's a whole nother experience. So I would say internationally, I've done one other volunteer now that I'm remembering actually. In high school as part of my deaf studies program. I went to Jamaica to teach deaf first graders for 10 days. And that was cool too. I have some regrets. We could have done a little more research. We went in there and, like, for example, we could have learned Jamaican Sign Language instead of showing up with American Sign Language. And anyways, I won't get into that, but yeah, like I said, I just feel like Guatemala and doing something for the community that's there, and John making sure that we get a chance to go back, the following year and just touch base with them. It's a community building around travel that's just beautiful, like what borders.
That's awesome that you shared that. And, we're actually giving away a trip to Guatemala. That same exact trip that you were speaking about, the Real Travelpreneurs, we are giving it away. But the trip is sold out. There's only one spot that will become available, and that's open to VIP. So anyone who wants to go on this amazing trip that Joe just spoke about, you guys will have to head to our site, therealtravelpreneurs.com/VIP, become a VIP, and that you'll be entered in to our trip giveaway for a chance to win one of those amazing trips to Guatemala. So I just had to put that in there because we were talking about Guatemala. You said such amazing things, and I'm like, wow, everyone
The
needs to
cool thing is
experience
that
this.
depending on the dates that y'all go, we might actually get to meet. We're still waiting on a couple of confirmations, but I believe I'll be on one or a couple of those trips. So that'd be awesome if you're listening and we can actually meet out there. Definitely bring up the fact that you were on this podcast, because that'd be a really cool way to loop around back to this moment right now.
Well, look at that. Look at that. Not only do you get to listen to the amazing, experience the amazing trip Joe spoke about, then you get to meet the Joe with the amazing flower
Thank you,
shirt on, with the nice
brother.
shape up. It's a win-win situation. Wow, look at that. So make sure you guys go on, become a VIP, and for your chance to win one of those trips there. So we have one of our VIPs, Benelli, said, you are the best host. And I love it. I'm like, I want to go on a trip with Joe. I need to go somewhere with Joe. So we have to set something like that
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Like I said, one of the things I think I put out there immediately, a lot of people are like, oh, he's the host. But I'm just there to have a good time, just like everybody else. Like, yeah, I got some restrictions, on me, but for the most part, I'm there to have a good time with y'all. And like I said, on a trip like this, I'm there to put in the work and just add nothing but positive vibes to what we're doing. One of the cool things is you want your trips to be memorable, and having a good group of people around you or doing something good like building a bottle school. That'll really change your trip, and it'll make it a trip that, again, you can't help but talk about again and again. Again, I took this first trip a year and a half ago, and it's crazy how much we've had the opportunity to talk to other people about it. So I think it's so cool that y'all are doing this and bringing this mission, from Hug It Forward, over to everybody here who's listening.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm super excited to see who's going to win that trip and who's going to get to meet Joe. Oh
Hey.
my gosh, look at that, look at that. So now you mentioned having a lot of fun on these trips and you have such amazing stories. Now, what's one of the craziest things that you personally have done on a trip?
Um, all right, so two trips come to mind. One of them was in Alaska. So again, I was working that trip, and with this one specific company, like, basically, I'm there if you need anything. So you go ahead and you hit me up on Facebook. Hey, Joe, can you hook me up with a couple extra pillows? Sure. What room are you? I'll get them to you. But we had just docked in Juneau, and I was like, cool, I'm getting ready to kind of do my own thing. I have my phone ready in case anybody needs me. And so I had heard of, like, this really amazing hike. And I was like, okay, like, I'm down to do it, whatever. But I'd never done it before. So I had a group of people from Korea. I don't speak Korean. I believe they had one person who was fairly fluent in English, definitely in Korean. And he's like, so Joe, what are we doing today? And I'm like, oh, y'all want to come with me? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I was a little nervous because I'd never done the hike, and it's like physical activity. And I'm looking at this group of people, and they were a little on the older side. And I'm like, I can't even talk to them like, like fluently. But I was like,
Mm-mm.
I explained to this guy, I'm like, look, I've never done it. It's about an hour and 20-minute hike. Like, you guys are welcome to come with me, but I'm not sure, what to expect. They're like, yeah, okay, sure, no problem. Like, let's go. And so part of me is like, I'm not even religious, but I was like, like, please, like, just help us get up there. So we start on this hike, and it's been 1 hour, an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I was like, I can't find the end. And we're supposed to, like, it was so cool because in my head, I was like, I'm gonna get up to the top. And then there's like this little trolley that comes down, and we'll just kind of look over, and they'll see like this really cool shot of their cruise ship. And I'm so happy
Yeah.
that this little group of Korean people, like, number one, they were like what age? They were up that mountain, like, no problem. And then I was also very glad that they
Wow.
brought the entire buffet from the cruise with them, because at some point we got hungry. So like they just started busting out all the snacks from like the cruise ship. And we finally made it to the top 3 hours later. So I told them it was an hour and 20-minute hike. 3 hours later, we made it up to the top. We have our nice little ride down. And I was like, oh my God, there goes this review. Like, they're going to say I'm the worst host ever. And the funny thing is, the next day we get to our new place and they see me and they're like, so Joe, where are we going today? And I'm like, that didn't scare y'all? That didn't scare y'all? So I think that was just such a cool story, because for me, like, that was the essence of travel, like we had an itinerary that, they could have totally followed and just done it. Me being me, if I see everybody going this way, I'm like, I'm gonna go check out what's over here, because I'm gonna take the road less traveled by. And so the fact that this group of travelers were just so willing to be like, you know what, forget the itinerary, like, let's just go with Joe and see what happens. And then the next day, they weren't turned off by the 3 hour adventure we had at all. Like, that was just super cool. So I would say that's one of the things that happened with like a group. The other one was in Cuba, actually. Cuba, I got one of the biggest culture shocks in Cuba. Like, just different things that I saw. I had a chance to meet a local almost immediately after hopping off the ship. And it was just so dope because I hung out with him and he just showed me, like the places that he likes to go eat. So I did tell him one of the times for showing me around, I'm like, let's go eat, somewhere you wouldn't normally go. The people there are definitely dealing with poverty. So I was like, you know what, like, I really appreciate you showing me around. We can go eat somewhere, that you might consider like, a little fancier, spend a little more money, like, let's go. But I mean, what I really enjoyed is just him taking me around to like these little hole in the wall places. And then from there, I don't know if he already kind of knew what the culture shocks were for some people, but we get to the street and it's just lined up with people sitting like knee to knee, all across the street. And I'm like, what's happening here? And he's like, well, Wi-Fi isn't like readily available here. So like this street has Wi-Fi and it's just crowded with people. I mean, they're literally like this, with their phones, like shoulder to shoulder. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy, again, things you take for granted. Um,
Right.
we got
Yeah.
to we got to another street that looked very similar, and I was like, oh, Wi-Fi? And he's like, nah, prostitution. And so it was just like a bunch of like dudes, specifically it was like the gay street, but it's like a bunch of dudes, same thing, like knee to knee. And you just started seeing tourists like walking in, sit right next to somebody, like, oh, what's up? And then if they were feeling them, off they were. And like both of those things, it's like, man, like, this is such a trip to see. We went to an ice cream shop. There was two ice cream shops on like opposite corners. One of them was empty, nobody, and the other one had a line that like it went up to like the street light, and then it was the street, and then it continued on the other block, and then the street, and then continued on the other block. And I mean, it was just lines and lines and lines of people, and I was like, how good is that ice cream? And the crazy thing is that he's like, it's not necessarily that it's good. He's like, to be honest, your flavors are chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. But the thing is that that's the one that we can afford as locals. He's like, so the one you're seeing there, it's priced for tourists, and we can't afford that. So,
Wow.
they have two different currencies. So, as a traveler, when you go there, you get one currency, and then the minute it exchanges hands to someone local, it loses a lot of its value. So they have to deal with that. He was telling me about how the people are constantly being watched. Um, they actually have a saying. What do they say? Como turista. I don't know, but it basically translated to like, there's cameras here to keep the tourists safe and to keep the Cubans in check. And so again, all of these little insider tidbits that I'm just like, whoa, so I think there's a few other things, that I could talk about, that I saw in Cuba. But yeah, I think Cuba was one that for me, like I hadn't been culture shocked in a while. I think after you travel quite a bit, you kind of start losing a little bit of the culture shock. And I feel like I got to Cuba and I just could not believe the things that I was hearing, the stories, what was happening. And I was just like, if I didn't have, this local dude with me, like I might have missed all of this. Um, yeah, Cuba was something else.
Wow, wow, wow. That was so much interesting stuff you said right there. I haven't been to Cuba yet, but I was just
Uh-huh.
picturing everything that you were saying, and I just feel like you just took us on another, like virtual tour in Cuba. That's really interesting. Like two different ice cream shops. One is priced for tourists, the other one is for the locals.
I'm not
And
kidding
like you
you.
said, take the
I'm not kidding you. Like one was empty, the other one probably there was probably like this isn't even an exaggeration. I would say like 30 people in line waiting to get ice cream from the affordable shop. That's crazy for
wow.
chocolate, vanilla, strawberry.
Yeah. Right. For chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And then just sitting so closely together just to get Wi-Fi. And here we are, just with Wi-Fi just everywhere in our homes, at our workplace, at McDonald's. Like you said, just these little things that we just take for granted, just like freedom of Wi-Fi, just be able to use. Even we could use the hotspot on our
Right.
phone. Like it's crazy, and we don't even think like there are other people in the world who like this is a privilege. Like this is like a prize to go like have the Wi-Fi so easily and readily accessible. So that was definitely an eye opener for sure. It
I'm
definitely
telling you,
was.
you don't know what you have
Wow.
here at home until you go somewhere else.
Mhm.
And again, like that might not be something you talk about, to people want to go, oh, what are the states like? I don't think you'd ever think like, oh, well, in the states we've got Wi-Fi everywhere. Like that wouldn't be
Right.
something you think
Right.
about talking, but someone in Cuba might be like, wait, what? Like you could just walk around and like Wi-Fi is
Exactly.
available, because again, they got this one little street. Everybody's just, right next to each other, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Travel more. Get out.
Exactly. I think that's definitely the beauty of traveling. So, since you said that, what would you say to the person that wants to travel more but they don't travel as often for whatever reason? But what's some advice that you can give that person if you were talking to someone and like, what, I would love to travel, but I don't.
Yeah,
What's the Joe
you
response
you
to
know
that?
what? Figure out your reason why you're not traveling and solve that problem. And again, bring it down to the very basics. That's something that, I've touched base with a couple of friends with, where people will see my stories or my Instagram and be like, "Oh, that's so cool, Joe. Your life's so cool. Wow, you get to go here, you get to go there." And I'm like, let's go. And people say they want to travel, but I don't know what it is with the mental blockage that they don't get out. I've had people say, "Oh, well, it's because I don't have money to do that." Okay, well, have you learned how to budget? Let's start there. If you don't know how to budget, you
Hmm.
know what? Again, we've got social media. Use it. Hey, I need some help. You want to reach out to me? Reach out to me. It's one of my favorite things to do. I've been debt free since I was like 20. Shout out to my friend Lily. Her birthday's coming up,
Nice.
but she taught me how to budget, and it like changed my life. I'm actually pretty upset that they don't teach budgeting in school. If that, like I'm barely making it. I'm a big believer in credit card points too. I mean, there are so many credit card hacks. Like, I just opened a credit card, boom, it was like 6 free nights at a hotel. So now I've got those banked. Now I know that I'm not gonna worry about where I'm gonna stay. That just cut how much I'm gonna spend. So I would say just be realistic. If you're gonna say I want to travel, make sure you mean it. And then go. If it's money, okay, well, I just gave you two different things you can do. You can budget, to try and plan ahead. You could be listening to the Real Travelpreneurs and trying to win a trip to Guatemala for free. Okay.
That's
And so what
right.
I'm saying is, there's answers. There's answers to your problems. Like don't block it out. If it's money, if it's I don't know, I don't got time. I don't got time. Again, I do try to live by, if I were to die right now, would I be happy with the last thing I was doing? Right now, absolutely. I chose to be on this podcast. I chose to speak with Shani. I chose to share my experience on travel. If I were to go right now, I'd be okay with that. And so I feel like, again, like just really selecting what is it that I want. If this was my final moment, if you don't want to go to someone's birthday party, you're not feeling it, don't go. Because what if you die at that birthday party and that's how you spend your final moments trying to please somebody else? So just really figure out what it is that you want and let yourself have it. There's nothing wrong with giving yourself, a certain level of happiness. So just pinpoint it. Don't say it's one thing when you know it's something else. And if you don't want to travel, then don't say, "Oh, I really wish I could travel more." I think sometimes people listen to other people say, "Well, what do you want to do?" Or what are some of your final wishes? "Oh, I wish I would have traveled more." Is that really something like, does that feel you? I talked about how happy I feel when I travel. Does it bring you happiness? And maybe you don't know that feeling yet. So, the cool thing is what you guys are doing here is you're building a community. You're getting people who enjoy traveling. And, if I don't inspire you to travel, then maybe, Shani does or John does or, any of these other people. I'm sorry, but John's name keeps popping up on here, so I got to keep bringing him up. But get in touch with that community or someone to show you, why it is that we enjoy travel so much. Pinpoint your issue and just, solve that one thing that you're saying.
I think that was some great advice right there. Definitely some great advice. So, guys, for those who are listening, if you want to travel more and you can't, look, Joe just dropped some gems right there. He definitely did. So, last question before we get into our private Q&A session with our awesome VIPs. All right. Now, you ready? All right. So, here we go. Now, I know you're talking about Guatemala, and you also we're just talking about, living your best life, because you just never know when you're going to go. I know prior to us, when we briefly spoke before this, you did speak about, the passing of your grandma. And this happened while you were on a trip in Guatemala. So I would love to know, how has this passing changed you? Has it impacted you? And I always believe that, there's purpose in the pain that we experience, and that pain can help someone else. So what's also another piece of advice you can give to someone listening or watching this who's experiencing pain from losing a loved one? But before you answer, I just want to thank everyone who took the time out to check out this episode. If you want Joe's answer and also be included into the next private Q&A with our guests, you have to become a VIP with us. So go to therealtravelpreneurs.com/VIP and get your access granted, along with automatic entries into our trip giveaways and tons of awesome stuff. So therealtravelpreneurs.com/VIP. So now, VIPs, this is the moment you guys have been waiting for. Get your questions ready for Joe, and you guys can now begin to call in to personally ask Joe your questions. So while you guys are doing that, Joe is going to now answer the question, because we're transitioning to our private VIP Q&A with Joe. So, Joe, do you need me to repeat the question, or
No, I got you.